Hi, my name is Don Frazier. I'm a teacher here at Ames UNM. We are a school here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My students are going to do a presentation on various technologies that we use here. And thank you very much.
Okay, so next on the presentation, our school project was to create a catapult or a trebuchet that would shoot a launching, it was basically a launching device that would allow us to shoot anything, but for our project it was an egg. It was a very big launching device. We'll give you more specifics on it later. But for the physics aspect of it, we had to launch the device 30 meters, and it was just, we had launched an egg 30 meters with the device. Then we had to have an egg go through a hula hoop in 3 different positions, and we had to keep the egg from breaking. So here we go. So for the first part, we did data collection. To begin, we tested the crossbow to see how far it would launch a hacky sack, which is about the same size and weight of an egg. Basically, we just chose the hacky sack. We would use our device to shoot it, and we gathered all the data. We would gather first the launch of the device, then we went to the range in feet, so basically how far it actually went, and then the spread, meaning how far did it go from the center of it. So if we shot it straight, but it moved a little bit to the right, then we would write down how much inches it moved. So this is just a graph of the project that my group did. As you can see,
your mic is still not on, so if you turn that back on.
Okay, so let me start again. Basically in this slide what we're presenting is how we relate physics to what we were doing with the catapult or the trebuchet that we built. Basically we used the kinematic equations to relate to the movement, the acceleration, and the displacement and the velocity of an object. And so what we did was we grabbed the second equation, the second kinematic equation, we put it into standard form, and then we began to relate it to the distance that everything went. So just to explain real quick, the launch point of the device, basically the x-axis basically shows us where we started, and then the y shows us how far it went, so 3.60, that is basically the average. Then from ground point we moved to, what we did was we moved after gathering all the data, we moved the catapult up, we elevated it, and we gathered more data to see how the height affected the distance. And then we basically just plugged it into the standard form equation that you can see up here. And it gave us we created it into a graph, which gave us the precise location of where the hacky sack would go. So basically this graph is just, this whole line was created by the standard equation. We basically plugged it in and we graphed it, and that's what it gave us. So for example, the egg would go through point 11.5 and 6.5. That just tells us where, basically this told us where we could put a hula hoop so that the egg would go through it. This next slide just basically represents what I was explaining. This is when we moved the catapult up. That's where it started, and then it showed us how the object would move throughout the whole thing. So a very good point that we could use the hula hoop in that would move that the object would move through is 11 0.63 feet and 6.68 inches height. Okay, so after testing how far and everything our object would go, we had to build a protection device that would help take care of the egg that we were going to shoot. So the first thing that we did was we accounted for the weight of it, and we made sure that the protection device was basically similar to the weight of the Hattie's sack. Basically, before we began creating protection devices, we did research on different ways to protect an egg. And throughout the research, we found out that there's many ways, such as using packing peanuts, as you see in the diagram. Okay, so basically what I did was I created an outside shell, which was a water bottle. It's a square water bottle because we don't want the projectile to move too much after we shoot it and it lands on the ground, as we saw with some of the round projectiles. Then I went into protecting the egg. Basically, I used marshmallows to cover the outside of the water bottle, and then I started inputting packing peanuts, which were very good because they allowed for space and movement of the egg, but not too much that it bounced around and broke. So this is just the dimensions of the egg protection device. So the length 19 centimeters, height 8 centimeters, width 8 centimeters, and then just all the marshmallows, packing peanuts, the egg. Oh, by the way, we did choose to wrap the egg in plastic wrap, just so that in case it did break, it wouldn't mess up our protection device. And so it's just a way to make it function faster. The way that we would insert the egg is by cutting up the water bottle about halfway through. And basically we just open it, and then we would input the egg, and then we close it and just wrap it with one strip of duct tape, and that was basically it. Okay, thank you.
All right, so we had done the AFRL Trebuchet Challenge, and basically this was a challenge for New Mexican high school students to build a launching device, and it was to use part of history and part of physics as well to be able to build a historic launching device that was used mainly in Roman war technology, and use physics to be able to determine where your the payload, where the object you were throwing, where it would land and such, and so that we could basically throw it through a hoop and know which angle to throw your, or to set your launching device to be able to throw your payload and make it land where you want it to. And so basically we had to use, well, specifically for our school, most of the teams in our school, our names had to be tied into history, and so most people did Roman names and things like that because they were related to the war, and that's where the trebuchets and the ballistas were. That's where they were used. And specifically, most of the teams had decided to build a ballista because it was a lot easier to build than a trebuchet. But both weapons actually were used in history, and they were both used as part of the war technology, and they were advanced upon until technology had advanced greatly, and they aren't being used anymore, and that's why it's considered unconventional use of technology, but it is still still studied today and things like that. And that's why we are contributing to the AFRL Trebuchet Challenge. And we have some pictures of a lot of our teams working on their ballistas and trebuchets. I don't know. The next slide. Click the here. Cancel right there, and then either here. No, next one. Okay.
Okay, so this is one of our pictures. As you can see, it looks sort of like a crossbow, and that's basically where it came from. They first started as little handheld, basically crossbows, and then they became much larger and used for bigger payloads. So instead of shooting just small arrows, you could launch bigger things. Ballistas were very accurate at the time, so depending on which angle you were holding it at, it would determine which, like how high the payload would go and where it would fall. So these were very accurate, and that's why they were used a lot. As you can see, there's a very long piece right here, and that's where the payload would be launched. And then there's the string right there, and you would pull it back, which causes the arms to come back with it. And that's how it would be launched. Okay, so this is another picture, and you can see yellow ropes on the side, and then there's little handles above the yellow ropes. And you turn these handles to tighten the ropes, and you put, I guess, arms in the ropes. So you put a piece of wood between the yellow ropes, and then you twist them to create tension. And this tension, whenever it was pulled back, it would cause, whenever it was pulled back and you let it go, it would cause the string before to push forward, launching the device. But this is basically where you start building. As you can see, these things were quite large. Ours, my team, we had one that was almost 5 feet tall, or even a little bit smaller, and then the long piece that the device would be sitting on that was launched was about 4 feet or 5 feet, and they were quite huge and could launch many things out of them.
This is just one of the other pictures showing one of the devices being made, and one of the things is that we are confined to a 5 by 5 by 5 space. But you also have to take into account the length of what we would like to call, at least for some of them, the wings, and also the width. And a lot of people had used, most people had built their ballistas in the same method. No one really made a trebuchet, but we do have a trebuchet here at our school, which we had seen launching. And the thing about it is that not a lot of this isn't considered modern use of technology, but it's definitely something that contributed to history, and it also has a part in physics. And so it's important to recognize this kind of technology and and basically I think that's what the Air Force Research Labs here in New Mexico are trying to do. They're trying to get more students interacted with this kind of technology. And there are about 50 teams, I believe, approximately 50 teams in the challenge, and these are from all different kinds of high schools all over actually in Albuquerque here, all over Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the challenge is, it started from last year, so it's 2014 through 2015 challenge, and there are a lot of assignments that one has to do to complete the project. And it's not only the building of the ballista, but there's also a lot of physics involved, and there's also a lot of science. And so it doesn't contribute just to it doesn't really concern one thing in general, but it's important to recognize all the different parts.
Okay, so this is another picture of constructing the ballista. As you can see, the launching pole, or the long piece touching the ground, it can be angled. So depending on which angle the ballista was pointed towards, the higher it would go. So as this one, it's launching, like the launching plane is basically touching the ground, so this would mean that the launching device would shoot high up into the air instead of going lower or medium, and it would basically fall back to the ground if it was shot right here. It would go very high and then fall back down. So depending on where the angle was, you could use physics to determine where or how far it would go. And based on how much tension you had, like how far the ropes were twisted, it would create tension. So you also have to take that into account. And so like the tension played with the angle, and you had to use physics to determine where it would fall. So basically this was our project. it helped me a lot in my group because by looking at pictures, we didn't really understand how these things worked. But whenever you actually had a hands-on project to experience what was happening, I started to learn why this helped this. Why did it work? Why is this working? And by just looking at pictures, you don't quite understand, like, how did someone come up with this? How did they do it? But by doing things that were hands-on, it helped us a lot. And they didn't use physics back then. They just kind of kept testing and testing until something works. But as we later on discovered, physics does play into this, and so does math and physics and history, and they all just kind of work together. And doing this project helped us see how they all tied together. All right, thank you.
So the use of technology, rebuilding, and scrapping metals helped my studies by opening me to a broader way of learning and applying them to projects. Like here, we are making bracelets out of bullet shells. And then
how did the use of information of technologies that are not normally used help my studies? Well, for me personally, it's kind of it gives me so that I feel like I have a purpose and that I'm doing something greater than just schoolwork. In this photo, these are some of my friends, and they're building a radio that we can use to communicate with other ham radio operators.
So, what I learned, we had a cherry shape project in world history in which we had to build cherry shape to launch a small object over a large distance. With my knowledge that I learned, I recycled materials around the house, found very useful things, and this helped me be more resourceful and more efficient instead of going to Home Depot or other appliance stores and buying the materials there. I saved money by using one of them.
Through upcycling, we can reuse what other people consider trash, and by doing so, we can reduce our footprint on the earth, and also it helps children and young minds to improve, and basically it makes a learning environment that is overall more rich and more educational to children through hands-on learning. Here we're taking apart old electronics. We can use copper in the wires, and we can melt that down and to make into copper ingots, which in turn we make into other items through casting processes. And we can take printed circuit boards like the one in the photo that they're taking apart, and we can take the valuable components off of them and then make our own circuits that we need. And from the circuit boards, we can sometimes get pieces of gold plating from like computers and components that need good electrical contacts. Here is an array of some of the radios that we've built here at Ames. There are different types that have different different radio wavelength bandwidths and stuff like that. And we have some battery packs here as well, along with a charging turbine that is able to charge the battery packs.
And I learned these skills here by scrapping metals from computers, TVs, VCRs, and sometimes even bikes. I was taught what was useful and what wasn't, like precious metals, motors, and heat sinks that we could use. And I learned what we did need for projects for school and outside of school.
In this picture, you can see there is one of our instructors is holding a red hot crucible about to pour molten copper metal into a mold to make a copper ingot. This is just one of the ways that we here learn how to recycle valuable metals and other materials. Right now, in this picture, it shows the instructor actually pouring the metal. And here is a picture of the cast ingot while it's still hot in the mold. In this picture, we have on top is a small radio transceiver, which both can transmit and receive ham radio signals, along with a battery. The radio unit is in the small box on the top. The radio unit in the small box on the top is on the right of the photo, and the battery is on the left. In the large box on the bottom of the photo, there's a larger ham radio transceiver that's got the battery box is on the right this time with the radio on the left, along with Citizens Broadband with style microphone set. Here's a handheld radio that we modified so that it would have longer battery life. The batteries are on the back, and we also put on an aftermarket antenna. The antenna and extra batteries allow for it to transmit farther.
The use of technology helped me by learning in a more efficient and conservative way. It helped me put my brain to work harder and better. For physical projects, I find what I needed and not how to use it. For more mental studies, I learned to find the information that I needed and to discard the useless information.
Here's a large battery box. It's got multiple accessories. You can charge it through plugging it in, or the cylinder on top you can crank to charge it by hand. On the side of it, there's a box protruding from it, which houses an electrical power inverter. This power inverter takes the 12 volts direct currents from the batteries in the inside of the box and outputs it as 120 volts mains current, available for using in drills, fans, and other small appliances. Here's a fan that we can hook up to the battery box in the slide before. The blades of this turbine, when spun by the wind, generate enough current to charge the batteries. Here's another photo of some students at Ames disassembling more printed circuit boards with components on them. And in this photo, we can see some students learning how to solder. Soldering is the process of fusing wires or other electrical components together with molten metal and a soldering iron. In this photo, there's a solar reflector array. It was made from an old dish satellite receiver. It's been modified with aluminum tape to be reflective, and when the sun hits it, then when you position something in front of it at the right spot, you can either boil water or make fire with it.
So, also I use what I learned in my personal life. I built a meter bike out of a shopping cart, a lawnmower engine, bike parts, and scrap metal. I used this skill to be more resourceful. I went around my house looking for parts and metal. I used the bike lines, handlebars from an old bike that I had, wheels from an old go-kart, and I taught myself how to weld, and I made the frame out of a shopping cart and some other pieces of metal. These skills I learned here from the use of technology with building scrap mills helped me not only at school but outside of school. Please stop recording. My name is Octavio Blanco.
And my name is Joseph Costin.
I'm in 11th grade.
And I'm 9th grade.